Welcome to this week's Cybersecurity Minute. This week, we're going to focus on an oldie but a goodie, Conficker. Now, why is Conficker so important to understand? Well, even though it's an old worm, the exploit utilized is still one of the main ones used in training new folks in the cybersecurity industry. So what is Conficker anyway? Well, Conficker is a computer worm that targets the Microsoft Windows operating system that was first detected in November of 2008. Conficker is also known as Downup, Downadup, and Kido. Conficker is a worm and it infected over 15 million computers around the globe, including government, business, and home computers in over 190 countries, making it the largest known worm infection since Welchia in 2003. Conficker targeted a flaw in the SMB network service in Windows 2000, XP, Vista, 2003, 2008, and Windows 7 Beta. Microsoft had found the coding error before Conficker was ever detected in the wild, having issued a patch on October 23rd of 2008. Just weeks before Conficker was actually detected in the wild. This patch, the now infamous Microsoft 08 TAC 067, wasn't installed by all users though, leaving them vulnerable to the Conficker worm propagation across the internet. In fact, 3 months later, by January 2009, nearly 30% of Windows users still had not upgraded and put that required patch to stop the worm from spreading. Conficker is really interesting worm to study because it utilizes a combination of many different advanced malware techniques, making it harder to stop. And the worm's author, who to this day have still not been identified, had continued to release new variants as law enforcement and network operators worked to get ahead of the problem and stop the spread of this worm. How did Conficker work so successfully? Well, first it relied on the exploitation of a vulnerable computer that wasn't patched for the Microsoft 08-067 vulnerability. They took a known vulnerability and then exploited it. It would send a specifically crafted remote procedure call request to force a buffer overflow and execute shellcode on the victim machine. Now, if that sounds like I'm speaking gibberish to you, I recommend you check out my free video, An Introduction to Buffer Overflows, in the Ethical Hacking and Penetration Testing playlist. Once that shellcode was run, it would join a larger botnet and be ready to receive its payload from a daily list of 250 domain names. And in later variants, they increased that up to 50,000 daily domain names, making it harder for network operators to get ahead of this problem. These payloads would update the worm from a new variant and have the ability to install additional malware like keyloggers, rootkits, and other nefarious software. The worm itself used encryption to armor itself from detection and even reset system restore points, disabled Windows automatic updates, antivirus updates, and more to prevent detection and removal. Thankfully, today the Conficker worm is not a major issue. Microsoft estimates that there's only about 400,000 computers that remain infected with it on the internet today. Now, these are mostly older servers or workstations that people simply refuse to upgrade or update, leaving them vulnerable. If your home computer is Windows 7 or newer, it's not vulnerable to an attack by Conficker though, so you don't need to worry about that. In the end though, this is still a very interesting case study in how the industry banded together to stop the worm from spreading. I can't cover every detail of Conficker or the fight to stop it in this short video, but if you want to get a great inside look into the world of defensive cyber operations, I highly recommend you check out the book Worm by Mark Bowden. It's a fascinating read for those of us in or entering into the cybersecurity industry, and he takes a non-technical approach to describing how the spread of the worm occurred and how the Conficker cabal, as they were known, gathered experts from around the globe to stop it. I've placed a link in the description below to the book on Amazon if you're interested in picking it up. I hope you enjoyed this week's Cybersecurity Minute. It was a little longer than normal, but I think the discussion on Conficker is worth it. Now, if you'd like to exploit the Microsoft 08-067 vulnerability yourself, you can check out my course, The Anatomy of a Cyber Attack on Udemy, where I use the same exploit to take over a victim machine and wreak all kinds of havoc. I've included a discount code below to pick up the course for only $15 for my YouTube subscribers. Until next time, thanks for watching.